Hello there, I am Daniel. A few of you have asked me how I approach my lighting and shading in my pictures, so I thought I'd give you a quick rundown. I might do a more in-depth tutorial later on, but I thought I'd just give you a nice quick one, just so see how it goes and see if you get on with this, and if you like it, I'll make a more detailed one, but for now we'll just cover the basics. So, let's just go ahead and jump right in, why not? As you can see, start off with your base colour. I'm going to use my Heartless Bear because he's cute. Who doesn't like Heartless Bear? The base colour I'm using is just blue. Feel free to pick whatever colour you want, doesn't really matter. But we'll use blue as that's what I've used in my original post, so we'll go ahead and do it now. So paint your base colour first. Obviously now with lighting you need to think a little bit about physics, okay? Unless you're doing something like fantasy, in which case it doesn't really matter. But if you're going for something a little bit more real, then you want to think about real physics, okay? Think about the direction of light. Where is the light coming from? Your source of light. Of course, if you're doing something a bit more fantasy orientated, where like the rain comes up from the ground or like gravity doesn't exist, maybe the direction of light doesn't really matter either. But for this, I'm going for the more real kind of look. So choose your point of light. So if you take a look here, in the original picture, the light is coming from what he's holding, which is just here in his hands. Now, that's quite difficult to do because you have to think about a plethora of different things. So for now, let's make it easy. Let's just say he's holding a normal thing. Let's just say he's holding a ball, but the direction of light is coming from up here. Let's say the light's coming in from the side. Now, look at anything around. Look at the things in your room, see where the light's coming from and where the light is causing the shadows to fall. Now, if the light's coming from up here, obviously the shadows would be furthest away from the light. So we're looking at, this area around here. This is where the shadows are going to be cast. Now, from your base layer, we'll leave the arrows there just to help you, but from your base layer, you want to add another layer and go ahead and clip it to the layer below so that when we colour, we don't go outside of our original drawing. Obviously I can go into more depth with that kind of thing later if you'd like, but for now, pick a slightly darker shade of blue of the one that you've got for the shadow. You can use any pen depending on the style that you're going for, but I tend to go towards the watercolour pen just because it gives a more natural, more blended feel. So I'll pick a nice big size. We'll go for 500 just to get the base layer of shade. Now, as we said earlier, the light's coming in from this direction. So just do like a basic paint of where you think the shadows would fall. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now already, look at that. Already you can see how much more detail and depth that's added to the picture. And I've only done like 3 strokes of my pen. I could even leave it like that and it would be absolutely fine. You see, look here, how much more detail that already gives the picture, and we've only done a few strokes of our pen. See, make it nice and light, quick strokes to give a standard base to where your shadow is going to be falling. Yeah. Now think about the folds and the shapes of the surface that you're drawing. Right. He's got little eyelids. See, so there would be a shadow just behind his eyes, like so. Like we said, the light's coming in from this way, so we don't need to worry too much about this side. But you might want to give it a little bit, just for a little bit of depth. If it helps, get an object and shine a light on it and see where the shadows would be cast and replicate that within your drawing. Now, that's just a base layer. There we go. So to add even more depth, choose an even darker shade of blue. Now, a fear that a lot of artists have starting out is by painting things too dark. Don't be worried about painting things too dark. Honestly, the darker you give your base, the more depth it's going to give it. So again, the darker shade we do on the edges, you see, even further in from the lighter shade, right? Because physics say the darkest point of a shadow is directly behind the thing that's blocking the light. So, for example, he's got his hands up here. So this would be directly blocking the light. So we'd make the darkest point behind his fingers and underneath here, as that's where the light is being immediately blocked. So this would be our darkest point. There we go. See, and again, that's another layer of depth, another layer of detail. Again, like we said, the darkest points, think about the folds of his face, think about what would be blocking the light? That's a good way of thinking about it. What blocks the light? And whatever blocks the light would cast the biggest shadow. This is how I approach it anyway. Other people might have different ways. I'm still a beginner, like I said, so feel free to completely ignore everything I'm saying, but this is how I approach. Anything that blocks the light casts a shadow, okay? Look at that, already so much more depth and detail in our drawing. Again, go even darker. It depends on, again, it completely depends on what style you're wanting to, portray. You don't have to go this dark. You could stop where I just stopped, on the previous layer. For the purpose of this tutorial, we won't go into too much detail. We'll leave it probably after this layer. See the darkest points here causing the darker shades. So that gives you a little rundown on the shading. Now already, like I said, it looks so much better, just like that. You've brought that 2D shape and brought it to life. Now, in terms of the light, let's go ahead and move on to the light. So again, like we went darker for the shadow, we'll go brighter for the light. So pick a lighter shade of blue again, and just paint where you think this did. Now we're painting the light, you see, so it's a lighter shade, sorry, of the blue we started with on the opposite side to where we were doing the dark. Now again, see that already. I mean, I even go, again, don't be afraid to go too dark, don't be afraid to go too light. I use white a lot of the time just to give that proper definition of where the light is hitting our object. Again, never be afraid to go too light or too dark. Oftentimes, that is what really makes the picture pop. You see, now by adding these highlights, it's just giving it further definition. Again, we need to think a little bit about physics, think about where the light would be hitting and what would be getting brighter, And there we go, see, it's added so much more definition and depth. And we've only added, again, a few little strokes of our pen, and it's already such a, better picture with so much more detail. Now, that's the base. See, I'm already done. I don't even really need to do anything else. That's literally, I could leave it like that and it'd be absolutely fine, depending on how much detail you want to go into, obviously. Now, to make, like, the glow effect, like what I did in my original picture, this gets a little bit more technical because now you have to think about not just the physics of, light and shade. You now have to know how to use your software. I use Medibang, which is a free software, but the same principles apply to every software. So we'll add another layer on top of that, clip it again. Now, to make the glow effect, think about the color of your light source. To make it stand out, let's say the light that's shining on him is, I don't know, red. Let's say there's a red light coming down. So we'll pick a nice red. I tend to go for the brightest again, because why not? Now, for the light, a glowing light, I like to use an airbrush. So again, all softwares should have an airbrush tool. Quite a big pen, doesn't really matter. Again, let's go with 300. Now we want to add a layer effect, a blending effect onto the layer. Now for a glow, I like to use the add effect. Now again, this should transfer to all different softwares, but we'll use add. And where we've put the light before, we just want to brush over with our added effect and our airbrush. Now, as you can see, it's just a slight touch, and we've made it red so it stands out. Doesn't have to be red. Again, you can pick any color you like, just over where we've put our light in the previous section. And as you can see, again, it adds that depth, that layer that we love. You can put it anywhere the light would hit. And look, see, red light glowing on your bear. Now, I like to add a white layer within that red. So it may choose a smaller pen and just add a little white to the edges of that glow, just to make it look like light as opposed to just a red, a red light. We now have that extra depth of the white to just make it even more like light on the edges of wherever you think the light would hit. You can play around with this. Like I said, you can change the direction of light, you can change the color, you can change anything you want. Just play around until you get something that you like. There we go, a nice red light falling down on our bear. Direction of light coming from this way, the top right. Now, like I said, you can change the direction to play around with it. Just again, think about the physics, think about where the light would fall and what shadows that would cast. Now, if we get rid of these and we go back to my original picture, let me just make these layers visible again. Now, as you can see from these pictures, I've made the direction of light come from the middle here, as opposed from the top. Now, as you can see, the light source is coming from the middle here. Just get a black pen for you so you can see. The light source is coming from here, meaning the light is shining up like this and out, as you can see. Now, again, same principle. I've seen where the light's coming from and I've just thought about physics a little bit, and I've painted the shadows on the backs here where the light doesn't hit, and I've just put the little light reflections on the bits that would stick out and catch the light, and behind these bits of light I've put shadow. You see, same principle. The points that are blocking the light have the darkest shade behind it, and there's a little bit of light where the light would naturally reach in a real situation, using my airbrush and watercolors to create that effect, make it a bit more real. And there you go, that's pretty much it. A nice quick fire tutorial. Again, I haven't gone into that much detail, I just thought I'd test it out, show you how I approach it. If you like this, we can make more, it's totally up to you. Again, you don't even have to use watercolor, you can use literally any pen you like to create that shadow effect. If you want to start a bit more basic, just use a normal pen. I've just on marker here, we'll do the same process, choose a darker blue, nice big pen, draw in your shadows. You see, same thing, just a different style. Don't have to use watercolor, you can use absolutely anything you want, but it creates that same effect. Really, it's just thinking about physics a little bit, thinking about where the shadows would fall on a real object and where that light would be cast. So there you go, I hope that helped. I know it was super fast and there wasn't much detail in there, but I just wanted to give you a little overview of how I work. If you liked this, I'll make a more in-depth one. I'll make a more detailed tutorial. Just let me know in the comments and we'll go from there. But I hope this helped. Happy drawing!